Good evening, guys. You know what time it is. It's time for tactics. Hey, so welcome back to the Tactics with Trav YouTube channel, where we go over games that are really helpful for tactics, understanding tactics, how to attack, how to defend, and we get really analytical. So we get into my games, and I pick games selectively that are going to be more universal for everybody, because we go through the tactics and the combinations, and we're introducing something a little fun tonight. It's going to be the brass bell. So I don't know if you ever watched the show Game of Thrones. I loved it in the mid 2000s, and in that show, there was a character named Cersei Lannister. She was really bad, a really bad character. But there was a point in the show where she gets shamed, and they use a big brass shame bell. So I have that on order. It was supposed to arrive on Friday, and anyway, it didn't. My wife has a smaller brass bell. So anyway, just so you know, I'm going to have something that's much more like that in the next video, but just hasn't arrived yet. So let's get into this game, and I'm playing a 1018, an older gentleman, first round at the Sioux Falls Open. This was just last weekend. In this game, I'm a 17-16 USCF rated, the highest I've been rated in years, guys. The highest I was ever was an 1800 for like a blink of an eye, and I shot all the way down to like the 1600. So I was probably not even really an 1800, and this is back in like 2016, 17, and then life got in the way. I got kids, job, so a lot more pressing things than chess. But I absolutely love chess, guys. I think it's great for life, and it's great for you and anyone that learns to play at a even at a 1000 level is good. So um, there's always room for improvement. And the shame bell is not meant to hurt your feelings or my opponent's feelings or whatever. It's meant to recognize that there was a mistake and there was something critical to happen in the position that we should have done better, that I should have done better, or my opponent, because it's going to change the context and outcome of the game. So that's the intention of the shame bell. So um, just want to throw that out there, but it's supposed to be fun too. So let's just get into it. So game 90, increment 30, and I play E4. My opponent plays D6, so looking like a perk. Bishop C4. So this is the bishop's opening, guys. Like, it's very playable. Not as popular, honestly. And no, I'm not trying to go Queen F3 and checkmate on F7. I know he's not going to fall for this. This is just a decent opening, and I know the lines pretty well, actually. So after Bishop C4, Knight F6, attacking my pawn, and D3. This is the common setup for the bishop's opening. And then the idea is to go F4, and if he played like E5 in the first or second move, he could take on F4, and I take bishop takes F4, and the bishops typically get developed quicker than the knights do, but that's common in this opening. So after D3, he goes G6. So it looks like a regular perk so far. F4, C6. So when he played C6, guys, I instantly knew the difference. So this is the check perk defense. It's actually pretty good defense. So there's a YouTuber who covers this in quite a bit of depth, called the Chess Giant. So you should check out his videos. Does a huge deep dive into the C6 check perk defense. He also does defenses like the hippopotamus and things like that. So anyway, I knew what was coming was B5, and then he's going to probably try to pawn storm down the queen side. So I was prepared to just go bishop B3. Nothing to be too afraid of, but just be alert as to what black's plans are in the check perk. Knight F3, bishop G7, knight C3, castles, castles. Pretty normal developing move so far. And then here it comes B5. So after B5, we just go back to B3. And what I like about these lines, guys, is in the bishop's opening, which is where you have the bishop and C4 comes back like this, is that pawn on F7, is it becoming something that black can easily forget is pinned. So like in the middle game or maybe later part of the middle game, there's a lot of times where you attack the G6 pawn more than once, and they forget that the F7 pawn is pinned. And so there's all sorts of tactics you can pull off on that G6 pawn typically when they're fianchetted like that, because they forget the F7 pawn is pinned. So very common, actually. Bishop to a6. That was kind of a strange move. But, you know, an X-ray attack on my f1 rook maybe. But nothing to be too concerned about quite yet, but just to be alert and ready for. Queen e1 with the idea of going queen h4 with kind of the standard idea of attacking, starting a flank attack on the king side. Very similar to like a Grand Prix attack against a Sicilian. And here it comes, guys. c5. That's a mistake. So pause your videos and calculate why c5 is a mistake, and I'll come back in about 5 seconds. All right, so you ready? So c5 is a mistake because we have e5. And the idea is black, after they retake, probably with d takes e5, f takes e5, has to move his knight somewhere because his knight at f6 is being attacked, right? So it can't go to d7, and if he does go to d7, he's taking a natural square away from his knight on b8. And if he goes there, then I got bishop to d5, and I'm going to win his rook in the corner. So that's awesome for us. So that's all made possible because c5 was a mistake, because now he can't defend that diagonal. Had he not done that, he would have been able to blunt out my bishop at by moving to c6, which would have been protected by his knight on b8. So because of that, you got to recognize from doing the puzzles that we do that that is a mistake, and we need to capitalize on it, and we need to punish black. So e5 was my move. And let's cover these lines. So knight d7, he can't protect his rook in the corner, right? So the other options are knight to h5, but why would knight to h5 not work? So if he goes knight h5, we can push g4 and win his knight. So his knight on h5 would be stranded, and he can't go back to f6 because then we can take it with the pawn. His best move is actually going knight to e8. And if he goes knight e8 and I go bishop d5, he can go knight c7, and then I take the rook in the corner with bishop takes a8. He takes back with the knight, which is kind of funny because his two knights are stuck in the very corner of the board. And what do we know from basic chess, guys? A knight on the rim is grim. So you don't want to have your knights on the perimeter of the board. It's not good. You want them in the central part of the board where they can be real active and attack 8 squares. So they're stuck in the corner. And on top of that, he just lost the exchange and be down a rook for a bishop. So it's good for us so far. So after I moved e5, he took d takes e5, and I took f takes e5, and he doesn't go knight e8, guys. He doesn't even go knight d7. He goes knight h5. So I thought about this for about 5 to 10 minutes. I'm like, this is game 90, increment 30, and I'm like, do I go bishop d5 now and win the rook, or do I press g4 and win the knight? So my logic during the game was 5 points for 3 points is better than 3 points for 1 point. So winning the knight for a pawn. And we're also we're taking a major piece for a minor piece versus a pawn for a minor piece. So we're kind of simplifying it too by taking out a bigger piece and trading off our bishop. So I did make the right move when I ran it through Stockfish, and I had chose correctly with bishop to d5. So after bishop to d5, he goes knight d7, and bishop takes a8, queen takes a8, and then I moved g4 because I wanted to see if I could pick up both pieces. Now, it's a little bit ambitious, and there's a way that he can defend this. So we'll get into this. So after g4, he plays bishop to b7, creates a nice little battery for himself down the a8, h1 diagonal. And my king's looking a little vulnerable here on g1 because I pushed g4. So his idea is after I take g4 takes h5, he's going to just take bishop takes f3, and then he wins my knight after I take his knight. So I didn't want that to happen, obviously, and I was thinking about a creative way I could maybe blunt out black's bishop. And my thought was, if I go knight e4, I can interfere with the battery that black has. But then I had to be a little bit careful, because if knight to e4, then what could he do to defeat that? He could go f5 and counterattack my knight. And if f5, I could take with my pawn, which was meant to originally attack this knight. But then after that, he could go g6, takes f5, and then make my knight move anyway. So it got a little bit complicated here. And so I was thinking, if I go knight e4 and he moves f5, I can just take his pawn en passant and say e5 takes f6, but then his knight gets away. So his knight gets off the hook. But I was okay with that idea, because I was already up the exchange. And anyway, I moved knight to e4, which, guys, that's not good. It's a mistake. So here's the reason, and this is what Stockfish calculated. So and I was correct about f5. If and after knight e4, he presses f5. This is what Stockfish's line was. So after f5, I counterattack his knight on d7 with e6, and he takes f takes e4. I take e takes d7. So you take my knight, I take your knight. And then his knight goes to f6, and my knight on f3 goes to g5. So that's what Stockfish's line was. It's a little bit counterintuitive for me, because it just seems a little risky, because in the way that I dealt with it was just to take en passant and then just cut my losses. Not a loss even, but just more like, hey, I can't win both pieces, but I still got the rook for the bishop. So I still think my move was okay, but it rated this as a mistake, guys. So Stockfish didn't like it. So after f5, I took f6 en passant, and knight h takes f6. Aw shucks, we just don't get both pieces. And but technically, guys, like, black is only down here like 0.1, so I'm only up 0.18. So I went from being up a point and a half after that exchange to being only up 0.18. So it really didn't like knight e4. Knight takes f6 check. E takes f6, which I thought that was an incorrect take, because he had a lot better takes. Like, if he took with a rook, it would have been a lot more active. Like, let's just go back. Like, if he had taken here, this is a lot more threatening for me, guys, because this knight is already attacked twice, and now it's 3 times, and there's just a lot of pressure. So I think rook takes f6 would have been a lot better. Or bishop takes f6 doesn't look like maybe it's that great, because maybe I can press g5, and then bishop takes f3, g5 takes f6, but maybe he moves his bishop first to like g7 and then still maintains the threat on this. A little bit uncertain, but if he took rook takes, I think that would have been a lot better. And but instead he chose e takes f6, but I think that kind of let me off the hook a little bit. So, because it closed down the f file, and he could have added more pressure to my already vulnerable king side. Queen to e6 check. Plus, it also allows for this tactic. So I figured I'd just simplify the position, fork his king, and win the knight on d7. King goes to h8, and queen takes d7. Bishop takes f3. Bishop to e3. I just got to develop my piece, guys. Like this, I'm pretty undeveloped, honestly, after these trades took place. I only had my queen moving around, and black is a lot more active, actually. So I have to be a little bit cautious here, so that I'm not completely undeveloped and caught without having moved my bishop. So bishop e3 it was. So bishop c6. So he counterattacks, or just comes back and attacks my queen. And so my thought process here, guys, is to go queen to I was looking at queen to d6 potentially, or queen to e7. I was debating which one was better, but I ended up and the reason I didn't go queen d6 is because I wanted just to maintain some pressure along the 7th rank, just to keep black's rook from maybe going to f7, because I had some ideas of maybe attacking along the 7th rank if I could get my rook there. But I just felt like it was more aggressive and kind of positioned me better um, for some ideas. But I went queen to e7. And he goes rook e8. And I thought this was interesting because I had already calculated this. Like rook e8 is not going to work to win my bishop on e3 because I can just take back on c5. So I don't know if he didn't see this or just didn't care about the pawn on c5. But after rook to e8, I just took on c5. Bishop to f8. And this is what made me think he might be, or he may have seen that anyway, and just wanted to activate his dark squared bishop and just get a really aggressive attack going on me because I am a little bit undeveloped. So that might have been on purpose, just so that he can really launch an offensive here. So bishop to f8. And queen takes a7, winning another pawn. Queen to c8. I just didn't see how taking the pawn was bad. I mean, it was considered Stockfish rated as a good move. It wasn't an excellent move, but a good move. But queen to c8 attacks my g4 pawn, which is, if I allow that to happen, it's taking my pawn with check. So, and my king side is completely vulnerable. So after queen c8, I was thinking, do I go h3 and just defend it, or what's the best way to deal with this? And what I decided to do was go queen to d4 because I wanted to centralize my queen and defend my pawn and also exploit the f6 pawn and pin it to its king. So that was, and then maybe with some tricks of like pushing g5 potentially, or maybe some ideas just to attack black's king and just centralize my queen at the same time and get off the a7 square, which is just kind of hiding in the corner. All right, bishop to g7. So trying to set up a discovered attack upon my queen and maybe win the b2 pawn. So I went rook a to e1 because I knew that if my queen moved away, rook or black's rook could just take my bishop on e3. So I had to defend it, and I also developed a piece, my last piece into the game with rook a to e1, expecting the f6 pawn to move. And he moves f5 like we expected. And then I moved queen to b4, protecting the b2 pawn, but also just getting out of the way of black's bishop. So interestingly enough, he just resigned here. He told me he just didn't feel like he had anything going. I think he was just really defeated after losing that exchange, guys. But not 1000s are still dangerous enough where C class, B class, A class players can lose if you don't take them seriously. And 1000s are there's a lot of them, but you got to take everybody seriously, and you got to respect your opponent. So he had some good ideas in this game, and even though I won the exchange, there was still a lot of things I had to watch out for from black. So anyway, guys, just don't take your opponents lightly, even if they're 700 points lower rated than you. You just never know, especially with kids, because kids are constantly getting better. I mean, exponentially better. So whenever you play a kid, I mean, they are learning at a very rapid rate. So never take your opponent. So some lessons to take out of this one: don't take your opponent lightly. Be aware of your tactics, like always, guys. Like this is the Tactics with Trav channel, but in this game, like we exploited c5. Like c5 was not a good move. That's why he got the shame bell. And then for me, on my side of things, knight e4. My idea was to interfere with his battery, but that was an improper way to deal with the situation because of f5. And had he dealt with it a little differently and then taken back with the rook on f6, I think I would have had a lot more to worry about on my side. So I still think it's defendable, but I have to be very careful that I don't get checkmated or something because of how my position was. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this game, and we'll see you on the next episode with a bigger shame bell, because I just haven't received the one that I have on order yet from Amazon. It's a big one. It's a big brass one, just like the show. So this little one, I was just lucky my wife had it for decor, just laying around the house. But anyway, the next one's gonna be really big. It's gonna be a lot more like the episode in the Game of Thrones show. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and watch this next puzzle. And the next video that's coming out is going to be my round 3 game, which is really crazy. So you got to tune into that one as well. That's going to come out on Friday this week. So watch that game. That's a game where I played a 16-40-41, and I was losing. So I just got really clever with like a counterattack and just used some tactics to save my bacon on that one. So tune into that episode on Friday. But we'll see you on the next one.